call the electoral area director. Nope, we've done that. We would been closed. Does close. We will, the CAO is graciously deferring her report till
Consent
the
agenda.
consent agenda.
And the rise and report will flow through.
Thank you. A motion to receive the consent agenda, Director Matt. Director Demare, anyone opposed? Motion was carried. Thank you. It's just the minutes. Business arising from the minutes. Nothing. Items removed from the consent agenda, none. Department reports, and then we get the CAO report will be later so that we can move to 9.2. Welcome to the visitors. Apologies for the lateness. We are on notice on title, construction contract, building bylaw regulations, Miller of Area C, and if staff would like to go ahead and present a report. Thank you.
Sure, excellent. I can start by communicating that notice on title or section 57 of the community charter is a tool provided to local governments by the province to administer and enforce BC building code and other bylaws. The notice on title serves as a public warning to potential buyers, creditors, and other stakeholders that the property may be in breach of bylaws or regulations. And it's to encourage voluntary compliance with bylaws as well. And so we have the first notice on title report is with respect to construction contrary to building bylaw regulations for the Millers. Staff are recommending a notice on title be registered, as well as if a building permit application process is not satisfactory completed by the property owner within 1 year, staff are directed to initiate the court injunction. And I will just note lightly that the initiating a court injunction is recommended when works involve infractions with provincial and federal regulations, such as riparian area protection regulations. And so staff are recommending this 1 year to address compliance issues before court injunction process is initiated, which would provide the property owners time to hire a QEP to do any riparian assessment, as well as other potential approvals from DFO or water licenses, etc. And I mean, I'm happy for the building official to add any other context, and then we can also happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Director Mack, Area C, please go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my question is, are these properties, is it ever possible for them to get a building permit? So if we put a notice on title, we give them 1 year to comply with getting a building permit. The fact is, they may never be able to qualify for a building permit based on location. So are we being, I don't know if we're being honest about this, like, should we not be saying, no matter what you do, you won't qualify to get a building permit? So then where do we go? How do we rectify this? Is this and the other thing, I guess I would talk to the CEO about this, is this actually a regional district matter, or is it a provincial matter? Because these lots were originally lease lots from the province. Then they were turned into fee simple, so they were bought from the province. Taxes are paid. So is it our responsibility, or is it the province's responsibility to sort this thing out? Like there's got to be some means of having a permit for a summer cabin, or like we've talked about this, recreational summer cabins that aren't lived in year round. Why would they have to meet all the stringent codes of the building code? there should be a specific permit for those type of structures. And like being water access, that makes it even more difficult to comply with. So I guess I'm just wondering, how do we sort this out and how do we make it work?
Yeah, no, thank you through the chair, and staff have been working hard to come up with options and a guide to compliance, so it was communicated with the 3 property owners. One of which is the Millers, and the first item that is being considered at this time. And you know, we work through steps, which is addressing the requirements with fisheries, and then we're talking about water licenses, and then we're talking about riparian protection regulations, and then we get into zoning and building down the line. So there are a lot of things that can be done before we even start talking about building permits. We also recognize that there are non-conforming options that would be explored through a riparian assessment. That's up for the QEP to determine how non-conforming interplays with the riparian assessment process. Any non-conforming structures, though, the intent of that legislation is that the extent of those works isn't increased. And so we still have an opportunity to be addressing development activities that are happening within that riparian protection assessment area that are new. So yes, we know there's cabins that predate the riparian regulations. There's a lot of development activity that has happened since then, and how do we start addressing that? And so these are the provincial level, provincial and federal level pieces that can be addressed, that court injunction is compelling the property owners to start taking action on, rather than just registering a notice on title, which typically staff would recommend notice on title when we're just dealing with a building piece. When we're dealing with concerns about fish habitat and other aspects that affect the entire health of the lake, that's when we do recommend exploring that court injunction process. Staff is recommending a year because these are complicated files. I will offer that boat access doesn't mean that riparian legislation doesn't apply. Boat access doesn't mean that the BC Building Code doesn't apply. There are, under the BC Building Code and the SOD building bylaw, we do provide for seasonal and intermittently occupied buildings that fall within the scope of that Part 9. These buildings, they don't have plumbing. They are basic. And that's not necessarily what we're seeing being constructed in some of these instances. And we do still look to Vancouver Coastal Health for approval of various servicing systems, whether that's septic or outhouses. There are options out there. There are still permits and approvals and assessments that can take place to ensure that environmental stewardship piece is being considered, and particularly for new development activities, whether that's retaining walls, whether that's accessory structures, whether that's renovations to older cabins. Yes, so happy to leave it there for the moment in time.
Excuse me. So there is a lot of room for the Millers, and in this case, you're online, hello and welcome, to bring their properties into a much greater level of compliance, with particular emphasis on some of the environmental considerations. This is what staff is saying. And that's what you're thinking that this next year's grace allows. And I suppose that could be extended if, I'm sorry, Director Demand?
Yeah, this is for staff. There's I'm looking at the online map of the area there, and there's a number of properties there. I haven't been out there, so I don't know what it looks like. Are all those older cabins that are on there, and some newer ones that are well, some of the older cabins that are getting modified and upgraded? Where's it at for all those properties in that area there? looking at, is it all super steep? Are all the old cabins within the riparian zone? Some of them out of it?
Yes, thank you through the chair and specific to the agenda item, there are photos attached to the notice on title package that's specific to the Miller notice on title piece. I'll let the building official speak to what has been observed from various boat tours on the lake.
Through the chair, during the most recent trip that we've conducted, the mill property has shown a new building being under construction and still construction being taking place, retaining walls being within that riparian setback, say docks being constructed and yeah, it's a new single family dwelling per se.
Yeah. The question is though, there's 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, 24 properties in that area. Approximately. What is the landscape like? Is it all steep? Do they all have cabins on them? If they all have cabins on them, are they all within the riparian zone or outside the riparian zone? And how many of them have building permits?
Through the chair, I believe there are no building permits, and where the existing buildings, like those properties that you've mentioned, we wouldn't be able to say they are within the 15-meter or 30-meter setback, but they are pretty close to the shore, but pretty leveled with the elevations.
And through the chair, I will offer that I think part of staff's concern is that if the perspective is that building permits building permits is one aspect, but let's say riparian protection development permits, if it's just these aren't going to be in play in this area, then any new development activities they're still not going to be following the regulations. We know that there are cabins that were built that predate the riparian area protection regulations. We also want to acknowledge that there are development activities happening or may be happening in the future, and how do we ensure that those practices are doing better now? And it is the QEP, the Qualified Environmental Professional, through the riparian assessment, will figure out how that legislation is met on a site-specific basis, given slope realities and other contexts.
Thank you. And that's a perfect answer.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
I do want to acknowledge the Millers on the phone and to further note that once a notice on title is filed, it can be removed once a non-compliance is brought back into compliance, and that the property owner has an opportunity to speak today. And that the property owner must be on the property title or an agent authorized, authorization must be provided in order to speak. And so just acknowledging that we do have the Millers joining us today.
Yeah, hi.
Thank you, and please go ahead. This is your opportunity to speak.
Okay, yeah, so a little bit about our place. We did have a fire about 2.5 years ago. Still unsure of what caused it. That was the purpose of the rebuilds. We wanted to make sure when we were building as fire smart as possible. We both have, access to materials that concrete blocks and stuff. Our family owns BC Brick Supplies down here, so we wanted to make sure we, did our best to make sure that future fires didn't either affect us or affect anybody else. It was a very scary moment when that happened. Luckily, there was somebody up at the lake that did see it and was able to get up and stop it from spreading to anything else. So yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind to try to take on the project to get it back to, a usable property. And, I have a child with disabilities, so making it accessible. We are on very, very steep slope where we are. So, being able to build super far back is not really an option for us. And we did build kind of pretty much right on the same footprint that was there before. And yeah, it's that water level comes up and down, about 6 feet. So you can imagine on a steep slope, that's quite a difference between full beach and no beach, basically. So making sure we secured that shoreline and prevented, further erosion on the shoreline was also a concern of ours. Yeah, I mean, we're happy to listen to what is needed, and yeah.
What about? Yeah, or.
Yeah.
We really just don't really have a lot of perfect instruction on what is needed. Like there's some guidelines, but we're still kind of.
It's still a very remote location. I know even the firefighters, they showed up there, they had a boat ride down, refused to go down to help prevent it from spreading. I did contact Kamloops Fire Department when it happened, and they just asked if basically I was worried about it continuing to spread or being in the ground, and I said no. We had it out pretty well, and they said, oh, okay, well, we'll just leave it at that. And so we knew that nobody else on the cat or on the lake has pulled permits to do any construction, and so I guess we just figured we would try to get it back to a usable place and dispose of everything properly. We did, go through it all and make sure we did our very best to make sure we weren't getting anything into the lake or damaging anything any further than what had been caused by the fire.
Thank you, Director Ford.
Thank you. Question for staff through the chair. There's a lot of commentary that I have heard from the community that there's confusion about where their fire service is, who they call in the event of a fire. And I think that this is a good time to put on the record what fire service looks like at Anderson Lake, because I hear Kamloops, and that is different. That is BC Wildfire Service. Am I correct about that? And our fire service that we have within the SLRD services, it will or will not service that side of the lake.
And I can ask Director Phillips to come in. As I understand, these properties don't pay into a fire service, so they are not serviced by fire. There's many areas in the regional district that don't pay into a fire service, and those properties have chosen to manage fire independently through pumps, etc. And BC Wildfire will not respond to private properties. They will once it encroaches onto Crown land.
Right.
So, and their response is mitigated by all the other fires in the province.
And so when they hear Kamloops Wildfire Service, that is not a service provided by the SLRD, and it is not a service provided to private landowners. It is a service to protect the Crown land in the area. That is kind of I think that's clear from what you've just said.
Yes, and wildfire does protect structures. It's when it started within the Crown land and it's heading towards, so there is a priority for structures.
Yeah.
We can get more clarification. I think the trick that I was doing is if you hear the word wildfire, it's not a personal property response.
Thank you. And I think that's relevant to this discussion because when these properties are trying to build something that meets the local requirements, meets the building code, meets the Crown requirements, all of the different private, different criteria that they need to check off. Some of them are at odds with each other. You know, you want it to be fire smart so that you're self-sufficient. You want it to meet code so that it's safe to be occupied. None of these are meant to be cumbersome or to create an impossible situation. But I think that there's definitely some challenges presented when they created these lots, however long ago they created them. And so how do we get to yes, so that these property owners can build something safe and meet all of the current codes? So I think that's the,
Thank you. So if I understand it, there was a fire there 2 years ago and you've been rebuilding since then. And I certainly see that you're rebuilding fire smart, but you decided that because other properties didn't have permits, that you didn't need a permit. That was unfortunate.
Oversight.
And because there's active construction going on here and there's clearly infractions, staff and the SLRD are obligated to take some action. And do you understand QEP being a qualified environmental professional to assess your property? Yeah, okay.
I understand all the what you guys sent us as a package.
Okay. Okay, you understand then what staff are asking you to do in the next.
I do understand. I just don't know to what extent we're going to be able to fulfill those requirements. And we're happy to make our best attempt and do whatever is asked and presented to you guys. We would just kind of ask that, you know, before anything is sent to a court injunction or anything else, that those findings are brought back to the board to be reviewed. So we can do due process on that.
So that it's your intention to make every effort to come into compliance on what you understand now you need to do within the next year as far as you can. Is that what I'm hearing?
We will do, yeah, we're not trying to run away from any of this. So, you know, whatever the committee and the board decides is what we'll be doing.
Director Mack?
So I guess my concern is, so if we put the notice on title on, and then we have that 1 year grace time before we do an injunction. Knowing what bureaucracy's like, is a year long enough? Like, what happens if we get to the 1 year point and everything, the folks are moving along, trying to get all their stuff together, but it's just not moving fast enough? Can we extend that 1 year to, you know, a year and a half, 2 years, whatever the time frame that we need and they need to get this accomplished? Because if we just put a 1 year timeline on it, and that 1 year comes up, and they're trying to get this all sorted out, and we are too, but we need more time. Do we have that ability to give more time?
Through the chair, we have other examples to lean to where we have had a recommendation to pursue court injunction, and this has been the recommendation right off the bat, was to pursue court injunction. That did compel property owners to work with staff to address the compliance issues, and there wasn't a need to go into injunction. And so in a similar fashion, if the property owners are working in good faith and the QEP assessment and provincial approvals or whatever is taking longer, we know that that system and process is underway. You know, it's specific to this property. I guess part of an expectation could be that the building stops, like a stop work order has been issued for this particular property. Construction, my understanding is that construction has not stopped. The building official has been out on the lake. We see that there are active construction continuing. And we're at a notice on title process here today, and we met with property owners in January, and there hasn't been communication since then.
I will say, like, anything that we did try to do was, for, access reasons and staircases, there was absolutely no construction done on the actual building itself as far as, anything, structural or hiding anything or doing anything of that nature.
Through the chair, though, what has been observed is that extensive work done within the riparian setbacks.
And the stairs and the dock.
And so that the development activities would include any land alteration, to clarify what that is, how that's defined under the riparian regulation.
Yes, sir.
Just a little question here, looking at where that building is and where the lake is. How do they deal with sewage?
So we do have a proper septic system in there. So it pumps up about halfway up the hill, and then another septic tank that pumps up all the way up the hill, about 150 meters or feet back from the lake. And then there's a proper septic field and 3-chamber septic tank all the way up top.
Okay, thank you.
And through the chair, one of the things that could be, staff would hope would be addressed as part of this process in advance of pursuing a court injunction would be to bring in Vancouver Coastal Health to understand how these septic systems that currently do not have Vancouver Coastal Health approvals would meet approvals.
Thank you.
There's a lot of work to be done in the next year.
And I will note, particularly relevant to this property, as we have heard of that the original cabin or structure that was on the parcel was burned down. There are parallels to properties on Gun Lake who've been working really hard to figure out ways to meet riparian regulation requirements and rebuild their cabins. And so there are paths to be explored, and we have, as an SRD team, worked really hard with property owners to figure that out. It feels challenging that we would not hold Anderson Lake to the same standard as we have held Gun Lake residents to.
Thank you, Director Demare.
Thank you. Through the chair, you're correct. There was a lot of work gone into for the property owners on Gun Lake that lost their properties. Not only there, but at Shuswap Lake and the Okanagan in the 2023 wildfires. For properties that were or cabins or houses that were within that riparian zone, so that they could rebuild it. That was a lot of work that went into that. Staff and working and going to UBCM and doing reports there too. So this one here is totally different, but somewhat the same. You got all those properties on that lake, that old cabins. Who knows where they're on the property, but I presume, knowing what happened at Gun Lake, that they're within the riparian zone, whether it's 15 meters or 30 meters. And you've got the septic issues. A lot of the properties at Gun Lake didn't have septic, they had outhouses. And now they're having to do that and get a water license and all the rest of it. And they're held to very high standard. And currently it's about 2 years to get your water license. A lot of them didn't have water licenses. And I think because this is somewhat the same but different, that there's a lot of work that the board and staff could do to work with the province to come up with some solutions to this problem. I'm sure that there's other places in the province that are very similar to what's going on in Anderson Lake and even in the SLRD still. And, you know, there's only 3 of these places that have identified with issues. To me, that would mean that the rest of them maybe haven't done any modifications. So we want to make sure that they don't move forward without going through the proper processes also. So for me, I would like to see a report come back in 11 months and see where we're at with the province, and if there's anything that the board can do to help with any letters that need to be written or whatever you need to do. If you could let us know to advocate, but we need to make sure that what's going on there is very similar to what's going on in Gun Lake. Because it wouldn't be fair at all, because they're getting scrutinized, especially if they got no trees and everything's visible. So to me, we can do the notice on title. We can keep that thing after 12 months. But at 11 months, if we could get a report, where are things at?
Through the chair, may I ask a clarifying question? I'm curious to hear more about what advocacy would be, what would we be advocating on in this specific regard?
It would be good to get an answer on all these lots that were leased on waterfront lease lots at one time that they've privatized. And at that time, what did they do? Did they give them anything that, you know, your property is not in compliance? Like, where was the province when they did that?
You know, that digging outside is a bit distracting.
So I think a little bit of work could be done from the board.
Yeah, thinking through the chair, so I mean, we do know that the riparian regulation came in 2004, so construction that was before that has non-conforming status. There are limitations around how much can be reconstructed and repaired and whatnot, but so that it's likely that many cabins that were non-conforming and maintain as non-conforming. I think staff is really mindful of new development and how that doesn't negatively impact the environmental stewardship on Anderson Lake. And we, you know, the beast, and we've mentioned this previously, but Prashant can speak to this further, is that, you know, the BC Building Code does have provisions for seasonal dwellings. Those are like scoped in terms of extent and how big and how much plumbing and how, like, they are meant to be seasonal and intermittent cabins. And I think part of the challenge is that we're seeing development that potentially new development that's happening that isn't really aligned with what that seasonal dwelling intent or is really enabled through the BC Building Code. It's pretty scoped in terms of what seasonal dwellings look like. And if we start seeing construction that is beyond the parameters of seasonal or intermittent dwellings, that's when we see these triggers for building permits. And absolutely, it's gonna be harder at a boat access only lot, and absolutely, it's gonna be harder when there's slope stability challenges. So that's part of what property owners can be considering when they are thinking about what new development looks like. And we also really want to be mindful about what development activities. Granted, there are cabins that are built within the riparian areas, but what new development activities are happening within those riparian areas, and how do we make sure that those are in line with the current regulations of today? And so I would be hesitant as staff to want to advocate to have riparian area protection regulations not apply because the lots are too small. We leave it to the QEP to figure out through their assessment how that site is going to meet the wrapper legislation. We do already have seasonal provisions under the BC Building Code. So, and we already do have under the Local Government Act non-conforming regulations that allow for cabins to maintain on their existing footprints and allow for maintenance of those existing cabins to a certain degree. And I think maybe just want to highlight that really, like, we local governments, the SRD, we are tasked with and required to ensure that the wrapper legislation is implemented and that development and new development is held to this high standard of a higher environmental standard. And we, like Anderson Lake, we know is a very important habitat portion of coho, sockeye salmon, among other aquatic species. And so just reinforcing that this lake is an important, is really important when it comes to riparian protection.
It is indeed. Are there any other questions? Comments? You can hear. Distracted. Would someone like to make a motion that a notice on title be registered against Block A of District Block 8597 pursuant to the Community Charter, Section 57, as the permit was not obtained nor the inspection satisfactorily completed. The building permit application is not satisfactorily completed by the property owner within 1 year. Staff are directed to initiate a court injunction to compel the owner to complete the building permit process and remove any building that is not permittable. That's one. And that further information regarding this notice on title may be inspected at the offices of the SLRD. So forth. Hours. Someone like to make that motion?
I would like to add to it that we put the notice on title, but the 1 year period for an injunction is, as Claire said, would not be enforced if the property owners are diligently trying to work with the SLRD and the province to get everything in order, permit wise and that sort of thing. We're not gonna cut them off on, day 365 and.
So CA Paul would like to say something?
Yeah, just to recommend it to address that. Currently, the wording says if the permit application is not satisfactorily completed. So what we can say is not being satisfactorily addressed. So the word complete is removed.
Yeah.
If that
That
supports.
covers that.
Okay, so let's amend that to say that if the building permit application is not being satisfactorily addressed by the property owner within 1 year, etc. And so I will make that motion.
Did you make that?
Yeah.
I'll second.
That, okay, you're seconding that? All in favor? Motion carried.
Okay,
Thank you, Millers, being here.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're gonna look at 9.3. Notice on title construction contrary to building bylaw regulations. This is Jackson to John. Also listed as Area C. Yeah. Okay. 9.3. Okay. And we have someone here from Jackson, John, yeah. Welcome. You'll get a chance to speak in a minute. We're gonna hear from staff first. Questions? Maybe we'll hear from staff. Go ahead, staff.
Yeah, thank you. So, building, these, notice on titles are related. They are, also on Anderson Lake, which is boat access only. The subject, notice on title. Want to mention that as with the previous notice on title, we would recommend notice on title when there is a building level infraction. Staff recommend further that injunction step when there are infractions with the provincial and federal regulations. And that injunction piece is to compel the property owner to work with staff to start addressing the various compliance aspects. And staff did meet with the property owners in January to go over the stop work order and what steps could be taken in advance of a notice on title. We are now at a notice on title process here that's being recommended. Once a notice on title has been filed, it can be removed once the non-compliance is addressed. And the property owner has an opportunity to speak today, and the property owner must be on title. And I think maybe specific to this property, there are non-conforming provisions that exist that under the Local Government Act that would be relevant to the SRD bylaws and also the riparian protection regulations, and those can be explored and integrated into the steps to compliance. It is the QEP and the QEP assessment that would determine that those non-conformity options under the local government and the riparian protection regulation, and how those would interplay given the development activities that have taken place on the property. Once again, reinforcing that development activities is not just construction of the cabin or maintenance repairs, additions to a cabin. It is also all the works and retaining walls and whatnot that happens within that streamside protection area. And we've one of the things that is staff would like to highlight, this process isn't looking to tear down cabins. This process is looking to make sure that every opportunity to protect and restore the riparian areas is being looked at. It's also trying to figure out what are the servicing systems that are in place, especially important given the proximity to the lake. It's about making sure that water licenses are in place and any new dock activity is aligned with the federal regulations. And this is also, we want to be bringing all development activity on Anderson Lake up to a higher standard, and that's new development activity. And so I think it is important to differentiate between cabins that have been there for some time that have non-conforming status and new development activities. And happy to leave it there. Happy for building official to add anything, and happy for the property owners to speak.
Anything to add?
So the chair, I'm open to answer any questions the committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would the property owners like to speak?
Sure. You start, you got the ownership the longest. Sure.
And Director Ford reminded me that you did submit a letter that did reach all four of the directors. The full committee did receive and review your letter. Thank you. It came in too late to be a matter of public record though, so feel free to refer to that in your comments.
Okay, most of the comments will come from my colleague Dwayne, being that he's an expert builder and architect. I just want to hit a few sort of high line points. One is, that's fine, I won't talk for too long. You guys have a long day. And thank you for the time. Firstly, I appreciate some of the flexibility or the uniqueness of the topography that we're building on comprehension. I think that's an imperative. I'll get to that. The thing that keeps us up at night is wildfires. As I say to my own community, it's not if, it's when we're going to see a major fire amongst these cabins. So we're taking all the steps that we reasonably can to make it safer The important point for me is the riparian zones. I'm not sure how you have a lakefront cabin without some riparian impact. You have to have access, or the province long ago never should have deemed these areas as buildable as lots. In our case, about 50% of our lot is on a rock slide. And there were actually 3 buildings there when I purchased it in 1993, of which we've removed 2, because physically there's only one place that you can reasonably place a building. It's outside of the rock slides path. High bank as possible on as flat a topography that is offered within that steep zone lot. Riparian, rigid riparian legislation is very pragmatic. So the little bit of background, I was the senior manager of planning and environment for Whistler Blackcomb for decades. I've had over $1 billion of assets go over my desk. We placed a lot of buildings and lifts in riparian zones because we could highlight, prove, compel to the government that if we couldn't put the facilities in the flattest area possible within steep topography, we would end up doing a lot of unnecessary earthworks. And the net result was a much greater impact to the environment. Therefore, still very respectful of riparian zones, but we needed flexibility to be as light as possible within development, within that landform. And I would suggest, given the steepness of the topography, it's worth a look. To really understand it, you got to put your feet on the ground here. It's very, very limited where a lot of cabins can be placed within this area. You have to, if you're going to what I call build experiences or infrastructure in ecosystems, don't change them. You have to respect the topography and place those buildings in the gentlest location possible. And sometimes that means you're going to impede riparian zones. But that's the right thing to do. So that's been my experience with construction in very difficult mountain slopes in my career. I'll leave it at that. Sorry, I'm starting to run off.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm Dwayne, and we've been friends a long time. And this cabin, if you saw some of the pictures, with bad state. One of the things that our partnership brings is, and I know, look at those and figure out what to do with it, and everything, of course, has to be dragged by hand down the lake. So it's a bit of an exercise. To answer one of the earlier questions, I like spreadsheets. So there's 48 properties on the east side of Anderson Lake, and they're all created, in the 70s or earlier. And from paddling the lake, and it doesn't take very much visually to see where you are relative to a 15-meter setback. I think 84% of the properties have cabins within the 15-meter setback. And the other few are within the 15 and the 30-meter setback. And as Arthur pointed out, to get to the property, you have to be in the riparian area. The bigger concern with the older properties is that to clear around the buildings to stop fire spread, you're already in the 15 meters and you're between the lake and the building, because that's the only way. As we found out with the Miller's property, that's the only way to fight the fire, is you're coming in with a barge and fire pumps if you don't have them. We're starting to encourage the neighbors to have fire pumps at the end of their dock and have a fire hose, so that if something happens, whoever turns up kind of knows where it is. So, it's been a lesson of learning. The other thing that maybe the building official might have noticed when he went down the lake, in the last few years and after the 2004 legislation, well, we know that at least 12 properties have had renovations or additions or bunkies built, but we're talking about small buildings. I think in our case, under the zoning, we could have a footprint of 7,000 or 8,000 square feet, and we've got 1,000, and we've taken away a 500-foot cabin. So, in terms of impact, I think we're sort of being very sensitive to it. We've left all of the trees. We've done the fire smarting. The most important thing was protect the building. Unfortunately, this is a building that could never get a building like that. I deal with geotechs all the time. I deal with structural engineers all the time. Structural engineers have been to our cabin. I haven't had a geoticket out, Kevin, but I can tell you what they're gonna say is you don't have a foundation and you can't get a foundation and you can't prepare the site so that the building official can turn up and say, where's your sign off from the geotech that this foundation meets the seismic requirements? We don't have any concrete. Structural engineers not going to sign off without a geotech because their insurance doesn't allow them to, so they're not gonna sign off. And we wouldn't comply anyway, because our floor joists are 2x6s, because I think when they built all the cabins, they were very sensitive to how much they put in the boat when they went down the lake. So, you know, we have a building that is livable, we've supported it, but it's never going to get a building permit. So, and we understand when this came up, it would be great to get a building permit. This whole zone has been not ignored, but it really hasn't been on the radar. Now that it is, because we understand the activity on the lake has increased. It's still the same 48 cabins. So in the last 16 years, there's no more cabins, but there's a lot more visitors on the lake. They're taking boats and sea-doos and barges and making camps elsewhere, which we've got an excellent septic field and a septic tank that we've built ourselves up on the bench. So we would probably comply. We can't get an approval from Coastal Health because the geotech required to sign off that the gravels are free draining, came from a pit, so far deep with sand on top. That's just not going to happen. And you know, you have to work with what you've got. So I can talk to the engineer that did our septic field in Darcy, and it took us quite a bit of time. I did ask once, he said, Dwayne, forget it. I can't do a report to Vancouver Coastal Health with a design that you can build. So here we are with the stalemate. I think the challenge, and I think what you're trying to do is acknowledge, you know, that it's changed, the lake's busier. It's certainly impacting the neighboring community. There's lots of vehicles parked all over the roads and everything, so, which aren't paying taxes. That's the problem we have in Whistler. You know, it's great being successful, it's just hard to manage. So I think, you know, acknowledging that property values is relatively low, they will get more pressure because population growth. So being able to notify property owners and realtors that, okay, we've got non-conforming issues, here's a pathway to biosmart them, improve them, make them more livable. Climate change is making them unbearable because it's too hot. So what are the things that we can do to protect the lake, respect the neighborhood, and be pragmatic about the fact that the province sold 48 lots that are not in a subdivision, that don't have sewer pipes and don't have trucks. I think the Young Lake one's a good one, except most of those properties have got a road to get to it. So, you know, if you want to bring gravels in or concrete in, it's a different situation. So I think we've got to be realistic. And how much effort, you know, in the context of all the zones that you're having to deal with, can we not make this make work that we're going to be back here in a year explaining why, and I can bring you letters from geotechs, civil engineers, structural engineers, explaining why that under their professional code of conduct and insurance, they can't give you what you want, and we can't get it. If we tried to meet the code, you'd have to basically tear the place down and start again. And that just doesn't make economic sense. So I guess we're here, we understand what it is. For the longest time, I really thought we were in the Kamloops district because that's where all our notices. And I mentioned to the CAO, when we get the text notice, it doesn't say Squamish, you know, regional district, it says province of BC. And on the fourth line, there's one item that is SLRD. So it's not exactly, you know, well aware, I think, of a lot of the owners. I mean, we're all locals. There's still a lot of owners that through generational inheritance are from out of the region in Vancouver. So they have no awareness. So I think there's a role in awareness and then figuring out a way that you, as the Director of Planning says, make sure people are conscious and protect the environment, which I think what we've tried to do and demonstrated best practices. Sorry, I thought that was more than you. Sorry, by the way, we're both politicians, so we're just talking about something else.
Thank you. Do you directors have minutes of questions?
I guess all I'm gonna say is we have to figure out a way to make this work. As you said, get to yes. So however we need to do that, we need to work at it. Because these properties, they're not going away. They've been, some of them have been there for 50, 60 years, maybe more. So we have to figure out how to make them legal, whatever the term you want to use. But we just have to figure this out. And whether it's our job, just working with the province, or the feds, whoever we have to work with, or all of the above, we need to do that.
Yeah,
Director Bruner and then Director Ranger.
Just on the water access lots. We've got some on Tartan Lake, and we've got some on Gun Lake that are water access lots. And yeah, so this issue is not only for Anderson Lake, but it's SLRD wide. And I think you've got one, at least one on Pavilion Lake
I do,
on the other side.
but the staff has some experience
Yeah.
in working with properties that are trying to rebuild historic cabin sites after a fire, in your case. Director Rainbow, I'm sorry, Clara.
yeah, I think when we're looking at lots along the lake, whether it's water access or whatever it is, there's a difference between something that existed for a number of years and something that is new. If a person buys a lot that has nothing on it and wants to build a cabin, then I think we can be really strict about what they do, where they do it, and so on. You know, if somebody buys a lot where there's an existing cabin and they say they want to tear it down and rebuild again, we can be strict about what they do and where they do it. I looked at all the pictures for this and did we see the pictures officially?
The pictures are in the package, yes, yes.
I knew I'd seen them. I knew I'd seen them.
It was just the letter that didn't get into the package.
So I think the approach we should take with that is to engage with the owners as we are doing here and talk about things like fire smarting and making sure that whether you can get somebody to sign off or not, you can be reasonable about how you're disposing with sewage and so on. So I'm not sure whether we need a notice on title or I think we should be able to judge whether an owner is working cooperatively with staff to do what they can within the constrictions that they have. So we might want to put in some kind of regulation that says if you're in a cabin that's by a lake like that, you must have a pump at the lake if it's accessible that can be used in the case of fire. I'm not sort of leaving it to someone to decide, hey, that might be a good idea. Make that a rule for everybody, and that I would think would be reasonable, something like that.
We do have some regulations around seasonal buildings. It's just that these owners haven't looked into that in a way that we're trying to get them to comply with now.
Excuse me, can I just, on the building code, and maybe Harrison can confirm, the only thing that's in the building code under part 9 relates to energy, so you don't have to meet step code energy, but in terms of all other components of a building, there's no discretion when it comes to foundations and site work and structure and egress and stairs and all of the other things that are in a building code. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, yes, so there are leniencies towards seasonal cabins and intermittent buildings. And those leniencies are energy efficiency. There's a partial for insulation. If your cabin's heated, then you'd require insulation. Same goes with plumbing, so if you intend on plumbing your cabin, you need to show the septic and sewage and all of your water licenses.
Thank you. Ms. Dillon.
Yes, thank you. So through the chair, we have seen examples in the SRD where lots have been challenged with buildable area and riparian setbacks. And the qualified environmental professional through the riparian assessment determines how that property and the existing structures and the new development activities meet the legislation. And so to the property owner, comments around, you know, sometimes buildings are best located in the riparian setback. That may be the case. That's for the qualified environmental professional through their assessment to determine. And we need to encourage property owners to go through that development permit area and go through that assessment process to ensure that we are protecting the fish habitat of Anderson Lake and also upholding our requirements to the province for this legislation. And so part of the in court injunction recommendation is to compel property owners to go through that QEP assessment process, which would likely be prescribing mitigative measures to address some of the new development activities that have taken place. And then to speak to Director Rainbow's point around notice on title, the purpose of the notice on title, and we have seen this come before the EAD and many times before, but that's really to serve as information to future property owners, creditors, other stakeholders about that there are aspects on this property that may be in breach of bylaws or regulations, and that it does encourage voluntary compliance. So the difference between the notices on title, it's a communication largely to communicate to future property owners. It's filed, it can be removed by the property owner in the future. And then to clarify that recommendation for court injunction at a future time, that is really to compel the property owners to work with staff. Noting that we did meet in January, we do know that these properties have challenges. There are opportunities to bring them into better alignment with our regulations and provincial regulations.
You're not expecting them to be able to come up into full compliance under given circumstances, but you would like to see movement towards compliance, particularly in the environment. You'd like to say something else?
Yeah, that's right. I just on the notice of title, I think that was discussed when we had our first meeting. I don't think we have a problem with notice on title.
I didn't think so.
So, because really, when somebody comes to look at it, you're going to see it's a non-conforming building, confirm it. But the 1 year and the next steps, I just feel that we're not going to get there. Our project is complete. The only thing we're doing is putting plants in. I put some irrigation in yesterday. Nothing is going to change. I've talked to the QEPs and they're like, Dwayne, this is a never ending exercise. The province is understaffed. We have huge floods. We have big climatic events that are far more urgent. And so it just sits on somebody's desk. So I think working pragmatically to say, okay, what is reasonable? Get a QEP report. Say, okay, here's best practices. And this happens in Whistler, and Councillor Ford and Councillor Dion will tell you in Alta Lake. It's been a challenge, and there's properties all around Alta Lake. It's not 26 kilometers long like Anderson Lake with 48. It's got 100 and something cabins around a small lake, and everyone's landscape is in the riparian. But what I think had happened is the municipality realized that best thing was to work with the QEP, get a report from the QEP recommending anything that should be done, and that becomes part of a permit approval process through the approving body, which would be here. And so that you get the benefit of a QEP report without having to involve, 4 or 5 years of provincial applications and costs, because the outcome will be the same. The quickest solution is to get the report of recommendations and have that done, which means item number 3 on your options, put a notice on title, add some wording to bring a report in the next year about recommendations for the property owner that you can review.
Director Matt, would you like to make a motion on this?
I like that motion, that was just me.
You're looking at file a section 57 community charter notice in the land title office with respect to the property. The property owner may apply to have the notice removed once the contravention has been resolved. Is that what you're looking at? I don't see any reference to a QEP being required here.
So
Let's do it.
through the chair, the injunction recommendation is to compel property owners to enter into that process to hire a QEP. So that recommendation from staff is to keep the court injunction piece. There could be language that speaks specifically to the QEP report as part of the focus of the injunction. I think it would be, to me, would be helpful to have the court injunction within a year so staff can work with the property owners, and we can come back to the board as an update if needed.
So we're back to option 1.
And I will note that with respect to the building aspects, like we are aware that many of these cabins, and this particular one, an example, there are non-conforming provisions. And so that piece and the building aspects are addressed through, like, can be scoped around that notice on title piece. From staff's perspective, at this point in time, the injunction and where we see injunction recommendations made is really to address the provincial level infractions. So in this case, it would be the riparian. I guess it would be also confirming the water license pieces as well.
And Director Danair.
Well, there's also the federal aspect of it too, right, with the docks, and that's where if you take a look at access only, they have to have some way to get onto their property, which means a boat of some type.
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna need the facilities to handle that. So that's a federal issue, it's not provincial.
And through the chair, that was, we outlined in our guide to the property owners. Step 1 was around the federal and addressing the dock and dock and any other type of water aspect issues at that federal level. And then we get into the water license and riparian aspects. And those were the top 3 steps that were recommended to property owners.
And sewage. Now, you stated that, whether it was this one or previously, about outhouses. Well, we've been through that already, and they don't allow them in coastal health. But in coastal health, they actually have a line in there about outhouses, where they don't have in interior health.
Yes, thank you through the chair. We have, Interior Health has confirmed that that outhouses are not supported. Vancouver Coastal Health has not communicated the same, and staff are aware of that same language around outhouses being possible.
Okay, that's one bright light. Director Ford.
Thank you.
And then.
So just a question through the chair to staff. Is there a process in which we can obtain a QEP report on the whole shoreline? So that it is our recommend, or can we hire the QEP to do an assessment that is held by the SLRD that gives us some information about sort of all the properties, and not to kind of dig into each property and say this is missing or this is, but just to say this is how they can meet our requirements, or how they do not meet our requirements, and that is now well understood And notice on title is sort of to future purchasers, potential purchasers. But for us, this is how they're meeting, or this is the new line to meet. Is that something that's possible? Rather than each of them getting a QEP to say you're not meeting the requirements, having one that sort of blankets the whole shoreline.
Yeah, thank you. So through the chair, not all properties would need a QEP report if they aren't doing any development activities that keep it doesn't trigger the need for a riparian protection development permit area or a QEP assessment. It's not until new development activities are being introduced or the existing uses are being extended into that riparian area in a significant way that would trigger a riparian protection development permit area and a QEP assessment. What feels like an opportunity in this specific instance, we have heard from the property owners that their construction is complete. There have been works that have been done within that riparian area. Are there mitigative measures that can be prescribed through that QEP assessment? So that's very property specific. In terms of like the whole lake, my sense is that every property is going to be quite unique, and what type of activities are being proposed is going to be quite unique as well. Wouldn't be staff's recommendation to explore a blanket wide, and I'm not sure that would be feasible or cost effective at this point in time.
And CAO Paul wanted to speak.
Thank you. I think General Manager Dewar did address one of the things, which was how do we get to yes? And on that one, it would be at what cost and at whose cost. So taxpayers within Darcy and Devine and everyone would be paying for, or if it's general government's LESRD will be paying for that very expensive QEP report. Whereas the injunction compels the owner to take that on.
It would be wise to coordinate with your neighbors to have the same person come on the same day possibly, but that's the only efficiency I can see here.
And I will offer up, just speaking to the riparian regulations, I'm hearing that, they have been very onerous. There are wider scale amendments that are underway for the riparian protection regulation as a whole, largely coming out of a lot of the work that was done around wildfire rebuilding and integrating those provisions into the legislation. It also is streamlining light or development so that there are different processes depending on the scale and scope of the development that's happening. Those will be in force in 2027, January. And so I think just to acknowledge that in general, we know that QEP assessments take some time. The province is working to address that system. We will likely in the SRD see those processes for our small single family developments, which are norm in the SRD. They will be working through a different, more streamlined in terms of that it's not as complicated. The rigor is still there, and that comes from the QEP assessment, but that they're not in the same queue as a large scale, subdivision application.
That's good news. Thank you. Director Mack, would you be comfortable with the same wording as in the last one, whereas that permit application is not that the property owner is working towards satisfactorily addressing?
Addressing rather than completed.
Thank you. Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, if a building permit application process is not being satisfactorily addressed.
Correct. Being satisfactorily addressed versus being completed, which I agree with you is beyond possibility. Yeah.
Okay.
So that will be a notice on title be registered against District Lot 1954, Lillooet District, pursuant to Community Charter Section 57, as the permit was not obtained nor the inspection satisfactorily completed. If a building permit application process is not being satisfactorily addressed. by the property owner within 1 year. Staff are directed to initiate a court injunction to compel the owner to complete the building permit process and remove any building that is not permittable, and further information regarding this notice on title may be inspected at the offices of the SLRD and so forth.
Just one question before we, so what happens at that 1 year anniversary when the property owner can't meet the requirements?
Yes, they probably can't. I recognize
Then
that.
what happens?
Through the chair, so they can't meet the riparian, they haven't hired a qualified environmental professional to undertake a right.
No, there's a whole bunch of other things that are in play here too, right? So maybe they can get that riparian thing straightened out, but what about Vancouver Coastal Health or, you know, the building permit end of it, the construction, all that. So if they can't meet some of those requirements, they're never gonna comply with what we're asking them, right? So. Yeah, I'm having a problem with this.
This is working towards compliance. That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Director Campbell?
What can we reasonably expect? What is, you know, it is wrong for us to say you have to do this, we know full well that that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But could they hire a QEP? Yes or no? Yes. Can they get it done within a month? Probably not, you know, but can they provide evidence that they've begun that process? Yes, I think that would be reasonable. And if it could be conducted within a year, that's great. But maybe at the end of the year, they say, look, we've had this correspondence, it's ongoing, we're working at it. We have to be reasonable with it. Then we can ask that same other things we could ask for. Vancouver Coastal Health, they look at that and they cannot, you know, I'm not quite sure how that process would work, you know, but there is a septic system in place there. What are we gonna say? You've got to dig it up and do a new one or something like that? Or you've got to move this building, you know?
Possibly so.
But we don't know that right now.
No.
So we should ask for something that is reasonable.
Yeah. I think too, what we need to do is make sure that staff and the property owners are in constant communication so that staff is telling them what you need and you're telling them what you can give. There's gotta be a two-way set of communications here.
Yeah, Bob.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate something that General Manager Dewar said, which is the intent is not to tear down buildings. The intent is to move this progressively forward, to compel the owners and to also set an example for anyone who's waiting with tools in hand to begin building. And I believe that staff added the year in our discussions. The year was also to add so we can figure out what is reasonable, knowing that there are limitations. This is unprecedented that we add the year for the injunction, and I feel it is a great recommendation by staff to add that year.
And further to CAO's comments, like we do acknowledge that there are non-conforming protections under the Local Government Act for existing structures. And that really we're looking at new development activities. And I think what we want to communicate to the community as a whole on Anderson Lake is that just because you're boat access only, it doesn't mean that the riparian area protection legislation doesn't apply. And just because you're boat access only doesn't mean that the BC building code doesn't apply. Like for new works, these things do apply, and we need to start seeing new development activities reflecting these regulations.
So that's a communications problem, isn't it?
Yes?
Yeah, having said that, that's wonderful, but the fact is, some of those things will never be able to be attained. So where does that leave everybody, including us, right? If we're trying to get property owners to do something or get something done, like say with new construction, what you're pretty much saying is, new construction won't be able to happen because they can't meet all these requirements. The way things are right now.
Yeah, through the chair, new construction can take place when you hire a QEP to get a riparian assessment and determine where you can build on your property. And what mitigative and protective measures can be put in place. And they set the streamside protection area, which isn't 30 meters, it may be less than 50 meters, that's for the professional to determine. That process looks at the slope and whatnot.
I guess so, but, so to build a new home, you have to have a permanent foundation, is that correct?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, so how do you get a truckload of cement? I mean, there's things you gotta think about, like, you're not gonna get enough cement down there. It's all gonna be done by hand. So, yeah, there's challenges here for sure.
Through the chair, to further comment on the permanent foundations, in any other circumstance, this would require verification, and verification would be whether they build it to a part-9 building or they get a structural engineer on board for the permanent foundation. So again, it begins with verification of what the options are here.
Yeah, and I understand that we're not trying to fix every mistake that's been made in the past, but we have a responsibility for current, future. And that is what this is trying to get at, right? Current,
Yes.
future.
Yes.
And I think just to reiterate that we would be recommending notice on title if it was just about the building and the building permit. And the injunction piece is addressing the federal and the provincial compliance issues.
So is that our responsibility to do that?
Through the chair, local governments are required to implement the riparian area protection legislation.
And we actually want to, it protects the lake.
Yeah, I mean, that's a non-question, but the thing is, some things that we put into effect, or the province or the feds put into effect, they do it without actually, did somebody actually go to the location and have a look at the topography and all that stuff, right? No, it's just a blanket, this is what it is, so,
These are the rules that we're applying in the SLRD. I certainly know in Seton, you need to have a geotech, right, before you build on the side of the hill. So I don't think you can apply the rules preferentially.
and I guess what we need to do to move this along is we make the same motion as we did to the previous one,
Yeah. That's what I was.
and, pardon me?
It's on the floor.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what I was trying to move, Russell, if you'd like to second it. All in favor? So? None opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
Your comment?
Yes,
We've got all these water access points. Seton Lake, Gun Lake, Cotton Lake, Anderson Lake, probably on some rivers. in area D. And how are we gonna communicate this to all of them? It's gonna be a mail out to them? Social media won't work?
Well, that,
So
it's
it
a
would be,
communications problem, and that's what we'll have to
it would
solve.
have to be a mail out.
Yes, thank you. So through the chair, we have begun work on communications and outreach specifically on Anderson Lake. And we will be extending that out to the SRD more broadly. So work is underway in that regard.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys ready to move to 9.4? Before that? Well, I believe, yes, okay. Request for decision notice on title construction contrary to building bylaw regulations, STRIM and STRIM, area C. Welcome, thank you for being here. And you can see the recommendations there. Staff, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you through the chair. This notice on title builds on the conversations that have already happened, so I won't maybe get into those details further, but just reiterating that the notice on title process serves as a public warning to potential buyers, creditors, and other stakeholders that the property may be in breach of bylaws or regulations. That's the one of the recommendations that staff is moving forward. The other recommendation is around the court injunction and pursuing that after 1 year to compel the property owners to address some of the federal and provincial compliance issues. Once the notice on title is filed, it can be removed, and that the property owners are here and have an opportunity to speak. So I'll turn it over to
Yeah, I'll go first if that's okay. You go first.
Like, did you want that would answer?
Okay.
So yes, we built a cabin, our last cabin that was on the property when we just purchased it 2 years ago. Was in disrepair, and we had professionals up there telling us that it wasn't safe. So we did build our new cabin. It is within the riparian zone, and we've been given the letter and been suggested to conform to the first 3 points that Claire had mentioned, which was the fisheries, the water license, and then the riparian zone. We have a water license. Haven't made any changes to our dock, so the fisheries wouldn't come into play. And I know that we've talked about this a lot, but I'm just really, I'm listening to Russell Mack and it's just really difficult for me to comprehend getting a riparian person or an environmental person out there that may or may not say, you could move we've got a 45-degree slope as soon as you hit 15 meters back, and it's all rock and it's full of bushland. And if we had an environmental professional come out and they said, you know what, there is an opportunity for you to move your cabin 10 meters back, then if we did, we knocked our cabin down and we moved it 10 meters back, we still wouldn't be able to satisfy any of the other regulations. We have a proper septic system, we've built it to code as far as electrical, plumbing, it's fire safe, we have our pumps. It's insulated, so for us, I'm not really sure what we're expected to do within the next year, because we've done everything that we possibly can, apart from get an environmental officer, which is just going to take us in a full circle, because even if they say, yes, it's okay where you are, or no, it's not okay where you are, we still wouldn't be able to move further. So then we're just kind of moving in this circle. And we did meet with you guys like a month ago, and the whole solution was, or what we talked about was, let's find a solution where we can educate people and move forward and make it successful for everyone. So that was giving us a notice on title, and then let's work out a way that we can educate people and move forward. And then we got a letter saying, here's the notice on title, please satisfy all of the requirements within a year, otherwise there's a court injunction, which was kind of a shock to us, because we don't really know what else we can possibly do within a year. So we're just going to sit there for a year and be nervous, trying to do something that we can't do anything more with, and wonder what's going to happen in a year. So that's my kind of concern. And you go ahead.
Yeah, I guess for me, the one big question I had was when we met with staff, they said they were taking a measured approach, because when we think about the first act was the Fish Protection Act that came in '97, which then became this riparian act. So when we talk about grandfathering, you know, we're talking about, what did Dwayne say, there was 48 cabins on the east side and 84% are within the riparian zone. What's the expectation with those? Because as Claire just said, they've got to take action if there's an infringement on the riparian zone. So is staff going to, you know, there was three other buildings almost in our bay that got finished building at the same time ours was. We got Wayne, who finished building the building 10 years ago. How are they gonna manage, the other properties that are up there? I went up the lake, there was people building sheds on their dock. And I know Harisham was just up at the lake 3 weeks ago or whatever it was. And did you see any infractions? You know, how many stop work orders did you issue or infringements to the riparian zone? The other thing too is Claire's mentioned a couple of times, it's about moving forward. What are we doing to move forward? So getting a QEP to tell us that we're in the riparian zone, that doesn't make sense. It's not a step forward. Getting a QEP to say, hey, and to Jen's point, what's the mitigation for the properties that are already in existence? Because we can't change, and whether a building was finished 3 months ago or 10 months ago or 10 years ago, they're not gonna, as Tash said, making people tear buildings down is gonna be worse for the environment than what the current state is. So does it not make more sense to accept the current state and then build the education program, get the QEP in there to assess properties and implement mitigation as opposed to, we can't turn the clock back on what we've done. And nor can Logan, nor can Dwayne. So what's done is done, but what's the plan moving forward? And I think to Heather's point, you know, you want to set an example. That's what you said. Like there's other examples in the lake. Like why aren't we tackling, you know, the other 3 properties that are in our bay that are in the same boat? So, you know, it just seems to me that the backward thinking isn't the way to go. And I think Director Matt said the same thing, is like, what are we doing to be progressive and moving this forward? Because looking in the rearview mirrors, it's not going to be helpful.
And one more thing, I know Claire, you said the expense of getting an environmental officer for the whole bay would be a lot, and that you didn't want to incur that expense or whatever. I mean, do you not think that Harisham putting stop work orders on the 84% of the properties that are all within the riparian zone, and then everyone getting riparian zone, right, environmental officers up, and then I'm sure it costs a lot and it takes a lot of time for you guys to have meetings for each one of those people. Like we know we did wrong, and to get us on a notice on title is fine. If I knew that we could correct it in the next year and do something that would help and be conforming, that'd be great. But like Norman said, is it time to maybe use us as an example and give us a notice on title and move forward, and then establish something that, like Heather said, works for everyone?
Yeah, because we'd like to be part of
I'm
it.
just gonna stop you there, because actually the comment should be addressed to the chair and the
Oh,
entire
sorry.
body here. And I think we're repeating points that have already been made. You do need to have discussions with staff, but just not necessarily at this table right now, right?
Our
Is it-
first time.
Is the chair the whole room?
Yes,
Oh, I thought Jen was the chair. She is of the entire board, and I'm the chair of the electoral area. Oh, I'm sorry. But we're also broadcasting to the public too. Okay.
Right,
cool.
Yes.
understood.
Go ahead, Ms. Stewart.
Thank you. So through the chair, this has been communication in the previous discussions around other notice on title items, but you know, from staff's perspective, this isn't about tearing down existing cabins. This is about how do we address and bring in mitigated measures to protect and enhance that stream side protection area and that riparian area. And that is for the QEP to determine. So they can come in after the fact and prescribe mitigative measures that would improve the area and address the development activities that have happened within the riparian protection area. And they would also then set expectations for where new accessory buildings or other things that you may or may not want to bring onto your property in a future state, where they could locate. And so there is an opportunity to hire a QEP, and the court injunction process is compelling property owners. We don't have another tool as staff, we just put a notice on title to compel property owners to go through that riparian protection development permit, hire the QEP, and get the QEP to prescribe what those mitigative and protective measures are. And so there can be works that are done and prescribed after the fact that improve the situation, and it isn't about tearing down a cabin and moving it 10 meters back.
So just to the chair, could the QEP come in and say, move your property back 10 meters and tear it down, and then it's out of your hands?
I do believe that, as Ms. Stewart just said, they're going to suggest mitigating activities that you can undertake. But we don't know. You have to hire the QAP and get the report and see what it says. That's because each report will be different based on the water in the lake and the access and all the different fish species. And it's complicated. Yeah.
And through the chair, there is an opportunity if property owners want to hire a QEP and get an assessment altogether, or like that's for the property owners to work with a QEP. It's not for the SRD to hire a QEP and establish what riparian measures are appropriate. It is the responsibility of the property owner to abide by those regulations, and there's responsibility of the SRD to implement the regulations.
So through the chair, if we hire a riparian or environmental, a QEP person, and they say that, sure, we'll give you a variance and you can keep your property where it is, now you got to go and get a building permit, which we know we can't get, then we'll just be here in 12 months in the same place. Is that fair to say, or?
Time will tell. I can't answer that. That's possible. Director Rainbow?
I don't see us being in the same place in 12 months' time. If you hire a QEP and they come in and suggest that there are some things that you could do around the property which would improve the riparian footprint area, whatever you want to call it, that's a step forward. And our sort of expectation might be at that time that we need to see that you're doing those things. That I don't see us being in the same place in 12 months' time.
But through the chair, then, because ultimately there was, the last step is getting, so we can fulfill, we fulfilled 2 out of the 3 steps already. Last for us would be a QEP. We can get that done in however long I don't know how long it takes to get it done. But then at that point, it's stagnant, it's stopped, because the next step is the building permit. And what happens at that point?
Thank you. And through the chair, what staff have been offering through this process and communicating today at the EAD meeting is that staff would be recommending a notice on title for just dealing with building permit infractions and building permit issues and challenges. The injunction piece is really around the federal and provincial regulations. So that's our focus, and those step 1 to 3 in that guide to compliance around the working with just Department of Fisheries notions, and ensuring that there's water licenses and the QEP assessment. Those are the pieces that we're really focusing on, and that's the intent of the staff recommended injunction. The notice on title piece is really trying to address that building aspect.
Right, and through the chair, The other properties, recent builds that are in violation of the same act, what's, because I know staff talked about taking a measured approach to dealing with these. So
I'm
we're,
gonna move to a question from Director Matt, please. Yeah. Did you have a comment?
Me?
Russell, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I guess, the concern I have, so if the environmental person comes and checks the property out and says there's no riparian issues at this site, then that is met, right? So then we go to federal fisheries, or is fisheries involved with that too? So what I'm saying is, could they get through steps 1 to 3? And then all they would have to deal with is the notice on title for the building permit, which then doesn't have a time limit on it. Is that correct?
Yes, generally that would be the approach that staff is proposing at this time. I will say there are aspects that we would need to be continuing to work through because there's a lot of information we don't have around, I will say one of the other concerns we have is around the septic and that would be a piece that would be helpful to have more information on that step and the processes that are currently in place.
But these steps could be worked through sort of one at a time. And in the end, you still wouldn't qualify for a building permit, but you'd have a notice on title, but the notice on title could be there forever.
That's 25 years.
Correct, through the chair, that's correct, and that would be addressing the concerns for any future property owners.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's up to them to make that decision, whether they want to move forward or whatever.
Yes. And Director Ford.
Yeah, I'm just looking for simpler terms because I feel like we're in a circular conversation right now about what needs to be done, what will never be accomplished, and what can kind of move us forward. So in the event that first of all, there is a little urgency to get a QEP because there's only a few months left that they can access the property. Once the lake is frozen, they're not going over there.
Doesn't freeze.
Oh, it doesn't freeze. Fantastic. So
Not in our lifetime.
okay, never mind.
That's over.
But so we put the notice on title. They go through for the next year. They get an environmental professional who's going to come over and say, you are where you are. It wouldn't be approved if you were building it today, but it's already been built. These are the things that need to be done to make sure that you're not spewing your waste into the lake. Oh, you're meeting that requirement with your current septic system. You're getting your water from where? We now understand where your water is coming from. And it's meeting the requirements of Vancouver Coastal Health insofar as it's safe to drink. That is fine. You're meeting the requirement of these other departments in either a federal or provincial jurisdiction. Or you're not, and you never will without some other checklist of X, Y, and Z. And then by the next year, by the current motion as it currently stands, we see that these are being addressed. They may not be completed. They may never be completed. But within the year, if they're being addressed, we don't go to court. We don't file an injunction. The notice on title stays indefinitely until the next purchaser 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And then by 20 years from now, they may not still meet, but that's a future problem. Is that fair to say?
Yes, through the chair.
Does that meet the requirement of the room so that we can move on?
Thank you.
Yep.
I think so.
So a motion similar to the previous two.
It is the motion.
Yep.
As it
Yeah.
stands. I think it just needed some clarity so that the people in the room can meet the requirements and
So we are also leaving the wording change as we did in the previous two about if a building permit application is not satisfactory. So we're saying we want to see the building permit, well, that the concerns are being satisfactorily being addressed. I think that's the wording that we had in the last two, the same wording in this one. I'll make that motion.
A second.
Seconded by Director Rainbow. Is anyone opposed? Motion carried.
Make a quick comment, please.
Yes.
Look, we've just spent quite a bit of time on 3 lots on the lake.
Yeah.
And I think been pretty thorough in our discussions and so on and so forth. But I wouldn't want people to think that we've stopped there. I wouldn't want to hear comments, anything like, well, you've done this to us, are you going to do it to someone else? I think we've established that we have concerns, we're going to address those concerns, and we will eventually be working our way along the lake, if you like, let's put it that way. You can't do it all at once. We're going to have 40 people in here and 40 things at the same time. But we're not picking on you. It's a general concern, but we will work in.
Yeah, I was just looking for clarity, that's all.
Thank you, Director Rainbow. We will take a break. We'll have a working lunch. Now I'm gonna start with your update.
I'll talk about, yeah.
That will be the next thing on the item on the agenda. Thank you very much for coming today. Thank you. I'll call us back to order after lunch. Thank you for lunch. We are going to have a brief update from the CAO.
Yeah, thank you. Heather Paul, CAO, SLRD. At this point, I don't have any updates, so thank you.
Very brief.
Very brief update.
There's nothing called point. I don't have any update.
Now,
It's always.
Mr. Hodgkins is here for the July Select Funds report. Would you like to come forward?
Yes.
And interact here.
Yeah, Colin Hodgins, Deputy Director of Finance. This is the July Select Funds report. The report also includes just one resolution to receive the expenditures from Director Rainbow for the Britannia Creek meeting.
With the appreciation.
Yeah, appreciation fund funding. Yeah, for the sake of time, I'll just open up for any questions on the actual Select Fund report. Want to start at area A?
All good.
Perfect.
Does anyone have anything on general select? If not, I don't have anything on area B. Double check that. Nope, I see the lunches costs haven't been deducted yet, but that'll happen in good time soon, yeah. Electoral area C,
I'm fine.
good. Finally, Director Rainbow. Have any-
It's fine with me, thank you very much.
Yep. A motion to receive. Select Funds report moved by Director Demary, seconded by myself. All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. We also need a motion that Director Rainbow's area D of Britannia Creek meeting receipts be received.
No, I thought that was all done, wasn't it?
That's
Those
included.
just received together. Yep.
Okay, those went together. Then we're on 9.6, request for decision, 2026 Community Works Fund, project funding allocation. Would you like to speak to that one?
Sure, yeah, this is fairly straightforward. We had allocated $20,000 to the Darcy Water Service. But we had specifically listed as being for the purchase of dosing pump and paging chambers. And the UES department has suggested they would like to prioritize a different project with that same $20,000. And they're just requesting a reallocation of those funds towards the cost of installing water sampling stations.
I'll move that.
Director Knapp, okay. Seconded by Director Mayor. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. 9.7, Community Works Fund, looking at $10,000.
Yep.
What?
Exactly, $10,000 was requested by the District of Lillooet towards sunshades for the playground at the rec center. And this is just a report allocating those funds. And because District of Lillooet is also the recipient of Community Works funds, they are not considered a third party. So we don't have to go through that approval, it's just a agreement with them to sign. Once this is approved, and we can allocate funding once we receive receipts.
And I'd be very pleased to move that one. Seconder. Director Mayor, thank you. All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Correspondence for action, we have a request for funding for River Valley.
Yeah, it's, there are conflict of interest for 10.1 and 10.2. As my wife is a director on the board, and my daughter is an employee of the BRDC.
Thank you, Director Mayor. Go and have some second. So the first request. Is for $4,100 in electoral area, so that's one support the delivery of an occupational aid. Level 1 and transportation endorsement course of residents volunteers at the Bridge River Valley. And the cost of break is broken down there. I would be happy to move that. Seconded by Director Knapp. All in favor? Opposed, motion carried. And the next one is funding for Bridge River Valley Community Association Braylorn Community Church Window Replacement Project.
That.
So would Director Butt, would you, or General Manager Butt, should say, can you say anything about this one?
Just that we get finance gets requests for the budget that they ask for each year, and I believe this was included as an item on their budget this year, but we did have to reduce their budget because it hit the max requisition.
That's why it's not covered.
Yeah, so we provide funding through the Area A Asset Preservation Service. When we received their budget request for the 2026 budget, this was listed as an item in the funding request. We did have to reduce the funding because it was at the max requisition. We didn't actually have a list of projects that were cut from their project plan, so we're assuming this was one of them. We had asked them for an update on the spending for the service just to help support this request. We didn't receive it. So we understand that there was a shortage of funding, but maybe approving this contingent on them providing an update on the budget, the current budget for the
capital projects.
Yeah, the capital projects, and maybe submitting receipts to the SLRD for this one would be helpful in just ensuring that all the projects in their plan are being worked on.
So go ahead.
So what you're suggesting is that if we were to approve this, we could approve it on condition that they send us receipts. So we know it's been spent in this way. And that also we'd like to see anything else they might be asking for this year. But it wasn't.
We've already provided or confirmed the funding through the budget process. We were just looking for an update on their spending of those, like it's somewhere around $40,000 that we provide annually. So we were just looking for an update on what they spent those funds on and why this, obviously looking for funding for this project. So those funds have been allocated.
We've been in contact with them as well. They couldn't get it into us in time for this meeting, so we just want to, confirm kind of where their capital projects are at.
So the motion would be to approve this subject to receipts being sent to us.
Yeah, I think wording around subject to a budget update and receipts being submitted to the Director of Finance, subject to their approval.
Angela, did you get that written down?
I did,
'Cause that's
Director
what-
Rainbow.
That's what I'm reading.
Pick the words right out of his mouth.
And I'd be happy to second that. Director Matt, you're okay with this?
Absolutely.
No one is opposed? That one will be passed.
Good.
The extra request for the budget update, got it? Thank you. And the next one is mine, a request for funding, Caribou Coast Tourism Marketing Association. They are
Just
holding.
bring Sal back in.
Oh, Sal's coming back, yes, of course she is. We'll wait for that. Well, for that, from the thing there. We're on 10.3. This is the Caribou Coast Tourism request for support for their tourism summit and AGM, which is being held in Lillooet in October. And I'm looking at the sponsorship options. And I would love to sponsor them. I'm having trouble lining these up. Fraser Canyon Gold for $1,000. From Area B Select Funds. I will make that motion.
Second.
Seconded by the rest of the Rainbow. All in favor? Motion carried. And the next one is a request from the Lillooet Friendship Center Society for $2,000 from for the production and printing of Lillooet's bi-monthly community events bulletin. This has been a very handy communication tool and it's getting better. And I'm glad for Area to be to provide some support. So I moved $2,000 from Area B Select Funds towards the Lillooet bulletin. Seconded by Director Mayor. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Okay, the next one is a bit bigger. 10.5. Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society. Did you want to speak to this, Mr. Hodgkins?
Yes, I would like to speak to this. We've reviewed this grant request and just to start, the LGA states that the regional district cannot provide benefit to a for-profit entity. When I'm reviewing this request, although it's being requested by a nonprofit, their intention is to pass these funds on to other for-profit farmers in the area. And
For profit is an assumption.
well, based
The
on,
farmers are barely making it, okay, just,
okay.
okay.
Based on the application, there is nothing confirming that this will be nonprofit society farming groups. If that was added, then potentially this would be something we could support. But I think that's a key piece of we don't want to be providing benefit to organizations that are for profit to ensure that they maintain profitability. Also, with this request, it would be providing an asset to an entity, and there's concerns on asset management. If we're essentially providing $10,000 of funding or up to 10,000 per farm, there isn't really anything in the request stating how that asset is going to be maintained. We normally require that assets are protected for at least 5 to 10 years if we're providing funding for them with an agreement, but providing funding through the nonprofit society and then to the property owner would, remove our ability to have an agreement in place with them. So, I know the Lillooet Agricultural Food Society does a lot of great work in the area, and I think there's maybe better ways that we could work with them to try and tackle this issue, where there's a bit more of a clear community benefit versus a benefit to specific farming groups. And maybe working with them on like an overarching policy or feasibility or study or something would be more in line with how we issue grant funding.
That's a wonderful suggestion, and I think it would be great for you to do that. I'm trying to deal with the immediate problem this season right now. So just on that, I see Ms. Dewars here, but also Director Demare.
Nick, looking back. The same topic. A couple of years ago, we funded electric fencing. Private properties.
In there is in Pemberton.
Well, the whole area.
Oh, would do, yeah, okay.
Not in D, but I think in A,
No, but
so.
It was aimed at
Grizzly,
the grizzly bears. Or bears in general.
Grizzly.
And that went to private property.
That's true.
I think it came out of general select because it was more of a region.
And
So I'm just talking about past practice, what we've done.
Ms. Dewar will remember that at our very successful agricultural advisory committee meeting that we had in person, which was really great, thank you. This was a topic. But speak to that.
Yes, thank you through the chair. So this was an important topic. Some of the aspects that were highlighted from the Agriculture Advisory Committee members were around this issue being heightened due to wildfire impacting their habitat. So the deer are finding there's a lot more conflict between the agriculture and wildlife as a result, and specifically the deer. There was a recommendation put forward to a resolution of a recommendation to the board, which will be going to the July board. And the recommendation was for the board to write an advocacy letter to the Minister of Agriculture and Food around expanding the grant funding programs available for fencing. Some of the discussion that was had around this item was that the current grant funding is limited for producer or has limitations around application for producer fencing. It seems like it's much more tailored towards ranch fencing, if I'm getting that correct. And so there is a gap in the Ministry of Agriculture and Food funding streams right now, gap and opportunity for the SOD board to advocate in that space. So I mean, that was the offering from that discussion I can add to the conversation.
Thank you. Certainly, federally, provincially, regionally, all these levels of government are promoting food sovereignty. And we're working really hard in Area B to try and just keep the small farming group that we have actually going. It is that bad. We have no shortage of agricultural land in Area B. We have the shortage of farmers. They can't make it. The margins are very slim as outlined. I mean, Sarah Petzing's written a very good letter. She says it better than I could. These, when you talk about this being an asset that we can't monitor, this is a fence. This is not something that the farmer is going to fold up and put in their pocket and walk away with. The fence will stay with the land. The fence is intended to protect the farmland, right? And so in that way, it's about food sovereignty, and it's this is not the long-term solution by any means. And what you're saying about staff being able to work with and we're going to try and fix and fill some of the gaps and so on. This is a very short-term solution, an immediate solution for some of our farmers that are like trying to make it through this season. And there's some examples in the request letter to sort of give a sense of how severe it is. And I know just from people that have gardens just for their own food sovereignty, they're not growing them if they don't have a fence. I put up a fence. It was a very expensive exercise and it works. I don't have any deer. It's amazing. And so I think if we can do this to support the Area B farmers here in the short time now, then I'm all in favor of it. And payment in lieu of taxes money can be used for this. So I would like to send it up to the board and recommend it. Russell?
Are you moving it?
I'd like to move this, yep.
I'll second it.
So, funding of 50,000 to support electoral, bee farmers and protecting crops with deer fencing.
Where's, excuse me,
Yes.
where's that 50,000 coming from?
Thank you. Area B, payment in lieu of taxes money.
I understand, if I can continue, the comment made about supporting for-profit enterprises, but it's, to me, it's a sort of a grey area, you know, you really wanting to promote farm, we as an organization want to promote farming, we're concerned about food security. Laughs is a not-for-profit society, and if they want to put some fences up around some land that's going to make that land to make it available to farming, then I think we should, it is sort of a grey area for me, and I would lean in favour of agriculture and food production, and I would support the motion.
Any more questions or comments?
Just, the electric fencing that we did was also food secure. Cause they were going in and eating all the carrots and so on and so forth.
It's also for grizzly bear protection, I think.
Combination.
Yeah.
And with that, we funded the Grizzly Bear Initiative directly, and they manage the project of the fence installation. And the difference here is Lillooet is, or Laughs is going to be providing funding to for-profit businesses. I think if there is if Laughs has identified areas that need fencing, if they can work with the landowner to have a stat right away on the property and manage the installation themselves, might be a better approach to this, rather than just having Laughs as a middleman between us and a for-profit entity of providing $50,000. I don't recommend supporting this as it currently stands. I think it seems a bit like a workaround to our rules of supporting a for-profit business. I definitely see gaps in that and the asset management side of things. So that's just my recommendation or my professional opinion on this, but.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We can certainly suggest that to Laughs. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? So all in favor then? None opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. The next one is a request for funding from the Pemberton Meadows Fire Association. 2026 operational funding. They're requesting $29,129 towards 2026 operations. Director Mack.
So we had figured out a way to get them 20,000, correct?
We have provided them $10,000 already. Out of the Area C amenity funds.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've submitted an updated budget request and they're still showing a funding gap of 29,000. I believe it had been discussed that maybe 10,000 would be available out of Area C select funds to provide towards that, towards this request. But obviously the Area C grant funds are limited, and supporting the full request is probably not feasible this year based on the expenditures that we've had in amenity and
so none of the other amenity funds that Area C has can be used for this.
We have the amenity funds, which are the contracts with the the dams and power suppliers, which can be used for operational spending. The CAC funds are restricted to only amenities and capital infrastructure, and they can't be used to support ongoing operations of societies or services. So there are essentially no amenity funds remaining at this point. The majority of the remaining balance was allocated towards the protective services vehicle purchase last month. So select funds is really the only funding source available.
Okay.
This organization.
And community works funds are not available.
No, we have provided $100,000 of community works funds to this organization for their fire hall, but it's restricted to capital. They also have requested some expenditures to be claimed under the Community Works Funds funding that were for the land tenure application, which I've confirmed with Community Works Funds are not eligible. It's only for the actual construction of the fire hall. So I know that they're working on that fire hall project currently, and they haven't included those costs in this budget request either, which they mentioned in their report.
Well, let's put forward 10,000 Area C select funds. And we'll just play it by ear, month by month sort of thing, and see where we get to in the next couple of 3 months. How much money we have left in Area C select funds. And then maybe we can, say come the end of September, October, we could give them another 10,000. Because right now I think there's 30,000 in there.
Jen?
Yes.
I didn't want to interrupt. I'm looking at the list of things here. It says it includes tools, supplies, equipment. Would that not fit under something other than select? If it's tools and that's not operating expenses, is it?
If they had like a capital item, well, Community Works Funds is limited for like fire departments to specifically fire trucks and fire halls. So like, even things like breathing apparatuses aren't eligible, even though, some organizations may consider those an asset. The Community Works Funds is really limited to major capital additions, and that's fire hydrants are eligible, fire halls are eligible, and fire trucks, but any sort of like even wildland response trailers, the structural protection units aren't eligible, which is unfortunate. I think it's a category that they could look at expanding, considering how much fire is top of the agenda these days. But unfortunately, those tools and like kind of daily equipment is considered operational costs and not eligible.
So Director Matt, 10,000 of your select funds.
Yes.
Area C towards this,
Please.
I'll second that.
seconded by Director Rainbow. All in favor? Unopposed, motion carried.
And it might be good to have, if you would like to review it, a motion rather than having to request them to submit another letter. I feel like we've asked.
Yeah, let's review our Area C select funds at
It's either going to be
for the October, I guess, EAD meeting.
Yes, you are still here for sure. Then-
Pardon me?
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, so to be reviewed at the October EAD.
Yeah, and if there's enough funding available, we could put another 10,000 towards it.
Don't mention the amount now, just say we.
Yeah.
Okay, how best to do that? Is that another motion then, Ms. Belsham? We're beyond friendly amendment, I think. I think this is another motion.
We passed the first motion.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is that at the October EAD meeting, the Area C select funds be reviewed, and additional funding towards the Pemberton Meadows Fire Association be considered.
Yeah, I think that covers it well.
And that was a motion. Moved by Director Mack and seconded by myself, seconded by Director Rainbow. All in favor, seeing none opposed, motion carried. Next item is the 1 Mile Lake Boardwalk replacement request for funding from the village of Pemberton. Back over to Electoral Area C.
Yes, so what I would like to do with this is I'd like to put $50,000 of Community Works funds towards this project. And I've talked to
We did discuss, and I think we were thinking of the CAC.
Oh, CAC?
So it's eligible
Right,
for both
right.
the CAC fund and the Community Works funds. I think we had discussed using.
Let's do the CACs,
CACs.
because we can't use them for anything else, it seems.
Yeah, and this is a good we did provide community works funds for this similar project a few years ago when they also had to do an upgrade project. I think it would make sense to try and use CAC funds for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Director Mayor, did you have a question?
Pardon?
Only half the ask. You're asking for 100.
Nope, David didn't ask for anything.
Oh, they said any contribution would help.
Okay.
What's it gonna cost?
1.4
Hold
million.
on, Director Mayor, actually, what's next?
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna cost to replace it. Yeah, 1.4 million.
Totally worth it.
Yeah, do we know what the total
But-
cost is?
Yeah, 1.2 million.
1.4 million.
We're almost there.
Yeah, I think.
Amazing.
I'm waiting
Okay.
to hear from, we've got a motion moved by Director Matt
Oh, it's definitely.
for 50,000 from your community amenity contribution
Yes.
fund, is that the right name? Seconded by Director DeBear. Anyone opposed? Motion carried.
And for clarity, that's a recommendation to the board.
Thank you.
Hey, right.
So do we have late business? Notice of motion? Motion for which notice has been given. We do have something here, 14.1. We approve up to $3,000 from Electoral Area D Select Funds for the purchase of a Lifeline semi-AED.
I'd like to update this,
Okay,
update you on this.
alrighty.
Just briefly, we had an incident at Oliver's Landing. The fire department attended, when we grabbed the AED and took it into, it didn't work. Jeez. Which could have been
Very bad moment.
catastrophic, but everything worked out well. We then went on got the fire department to review the AEDs in Ferry Creek, there are 3 of them. And we decided that we would get the same models that the fire department use in their trucks. So $3,000 would have covered one. Fine Peace is going to pay for the second one, and the third one was judged to be okay for another couple of years. So that's where I was when I put this in. Since then, the new fire chief has sort of reviewed everything, and he has recommended that instead of getting these ones, which are about 2,600 by the time you finished, he's recommended that we go to the model that the ambulance service uses, which comes up to about 3,500 each. And his reasoning there is, and he also wants to change the ones that they're using on the fire trucks to the ambulance service models as well. So we eventually would have 6 AEDs in Britannia, 3 with the fire department, 3 in the community. And if there's any more, if they put any more in Britannia Beach, for example, in the community there, he's going to recommend they use the same ones. So we're now at the situation where we've decided to replace both of the AEDs in Ferry Creek that the SLRD paid for, and the third one, Fine Peace will pay for, because it's going to be lodged in their building. So what I'm looking for then, I'm not quite clear what the cost will be. It's around 35 each. So what I want to move is that we allocate up to $8,000 from Area D Select. And I know there's an issue now when we get to that kind of pricing with our procurement policies. So I'd ask staff to weigh in on this.
I can help. I think my recommendation would be to refer to staff with the support of up to $8,000, and staff will ensure that all procurement policies are being made and that we purchase it as speedily as possible, because it is a important feature. I think that would be, the fire chief is an employee of the SLRD, so that staff is.
If I could also add that Fire chief provided that advice. Brian Owens, who is a firefighter with the Britannia Beach, is taking responsibility, or has been given the responsibility of processing the order, getting value for trade-ins and so on. And the idea was that it would be better if the fire department purchased them rather than we did it from outside. You know, they maybe get a slightly better price that way. And so if we can make that happen, I'd be very happy. And as CEO said, that there is a sense of urgency here because you know, you hope you're not going to get another event like we had, but if we do, we want to make sure we've got stuff in place that it's working. And my final comment is that the fire department have offered that once these are in place, they will maintain them on a regular basis with whatever inspections are used and so on. So because we don't want it, you know, when you leave it to volunteers to keep things up, sometimes things fall through the cracks, you know, nobody's fault really, but it just happens. Whereas if it's in the fire department's diary, it will get done.
So vouchers should be changed annually, whether they need to be or not.
Well, I'm gonna leave that to the budget.
No, but seriously,
I get it.
we do that in Darcy with the one we have there in the community.
Yeah. We all have to.
All right,
I can speak to this really quickly.
please go ahead.
Couple things just to clarify. One, if it's gonna be, we could grant these funds to the volunteer fire department society and they could handle the procurement on their own. The other option would be to allocate funds to the service and it would be purchased through the SLRD through the service. Though either option could work for this. However, the ongoing operational cost would be the same, I guess. If that's a responsibility of the SLRD department, then that would be something that would be included in the upcoming budget discussions. And we would have to include replacement and maintenance of that in our budget. If it was society that's managing that contract with the strata corporations and the placement of that, then they can handle that on their own if we granted the funds to them that way. And I think it is good that we're doing this through the society department, the fire department, versus through the strata, as obviously with the new grant policy, we're trying to move away from stratas. So I think this is it's a good initiative, and going to the society, the fire department would be.
So if I could make that motion, then we grant up to $8,000 to the Britannia Beach Fire Society. I'm not quite sure what
Firefighter Society, I'm not sure the name, but yes.
Will we have that information or do I need to get it for you?
I have it, I can look it up, I just don't have it on the top of my head, so I could connect with.
Is that motion good enough for you then, up to $8,000 to the Fire Society?
Can I ask a question? It would be Fire Society or our cost center. We're getting into a department of the SLRD at this point in a fire. So I think, can we have it one or the other and refer to staff, and staff will expedite this so that we can ensure that operations are being followed and that we have budget to maintain this asset, and it's in our work plan. So I just only ask that it be either the society or the cost center, and that staff can make that call that makes it the best for the organization and for the community.
Fine with me. That's what I'm moving.
Reported by Ms. Belsham and seconded by Director Knott. Any comment? All in favor?
So can we give them the green light to go ahead and order them as soon as they're ready?
That's what's happened. That is the motion.
Yeah.
That is the motion to expedite it.
Expedite means, okay, thank you. I'm in favor, anybody else in favor?
None opposed, the motion carried.
Okay,
Now I would
Thank
need
you.
someone to call.
we return, please.
Director Rainbow. Second by Director Mack, no one is opposed to that. We are adjourned.